It is time to wrap up our lesson on plants. So for our last lesson, we are going to be discussing how plants grow. We learned a little bit about photosynthesis, and we know that the energy from the sun and the nutrients from the soil help a plant to grow. But there are some other factors involved too. We're going to talk a little bit about what plants have inside of them that help them grow, as well as how the environment can impact the way that a plant grows. Germination is a big word. Say it with me. Germination. This is a fancy word for the first time that a plant sprouts. So when you plant a seed, after a little while, you might see a little itty bitty green stem come out of it. That is germination. It's the first time that you see green coming from the soil. You might have thought about the fact that there are a lot of different shapes of plants. Not all flowers look the same. Not all trees look the same. Even bushes look different. Every plant is different. I want you to think about at least 3 plants that are all shaped differently, and I want you to describe what they look like in words. So instead of drawing a picture, I want you to think about how you could use your vocabulary to describe what those plants look like. You can tell me about their color and what they smell like, but I want you to focus on the shape of the plant. Think about the way that the tree grows or the way that the flower grows. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that and maybe jot some thoughts down on a piece of paper so that you can then type it and email it to me, okay? If you still have more work to do, you can always come back to it, or you can pause the video right now and finish before you press play again, okay? So we're going to talk about why plants do look so different. There's something called DNA. All living organisms have DNA, which means you and I have DNA. You ever have someone tell you, oh, you look just like your mom, or you look just like your dad? That's because of your DNA. Your DNA comes from your mom and your dad, so you might look like one of them or both of them. I know I look a lot like my dad, but my brother looks a lot like my mom. That's because our DNA told us how we were going to grow up to look. So the DNA of a plant tells it how to grow. For a plant, the DNA doesn't come from a mom or a dad. It comes from the fertilization of the pollen and the pistil, like how we talked about yesterday. When the bee or the wind or the water or the bird moves the pollen from the stamen to the pistil, that is when it fertilizes. And the DNA rests in that fertilization. It is the genetic code that controls what the plant looks like. Now, DNA isn't the only thing that controls how a plant grows. The environment does too. Just like how you and I need to have a good environment, so do plants. If I put you in a hot desert, you might not do very well, huh? You might get really thirsty. You might not know where to get food. If I put you in Antarctica, where there was a lot of ice and maybe you didn't have a warm place to stay, probably wouldn't do well there either. But in Pennsylvania, we have an environment where we're not too hot and we're not too cold. Plants are the same way. Plants need healthy soil and air so that they can grow well. Now, there are some exceptions, like how cacti will grow in the desert, even though that's a very hot environment. And people are the same way. Some people come up with ways to live in harsh environments and to still survive and grow in a healthy way. But for the most part, plants need a really good environment in order to grow. So on this next slide, I want you to look at the pictures of the different environments that I'm showing you. If you look at number 1, you will see an icy tundra. Looks very cold there. And if you look at number 2, You'll see a nice big ocean. There's a big rock in the middle. The sun is setting. Looks like a pretty warm place to be, especially in the daytime. Would plants grow well in either of these environments? I want you to take a look at these pictures and tell me if you think that a plant would grow well here. I'm going to give you a hint. One of the environments, the plant would not grow well. In the other environment, the plant would grow well. I don't want you to just tell me which is which. I want you to explain why or why not. So tell me why a plant would not grow in one of these environments, and tell me why a plant would grow in the other environment. Good work with this science lesson this week, boys and girls. You've been doing an awesome job.